Hi, and welcome to Commissioner's Corner. I'm your host, Lois Leonard, and thanks for joining us. Rarely does a day go by without a national news story about our country's immigrant status. Frustrations and fears persist, often due to a lack of clear information. But in Boston, Mayor Walsh created the Office for Immigrant Advancement, and today we want to get the word out. What does this office have to offer some of our city's most vulnerable? The new director of this office, Yusufi Vali, joins us for a very important conversation. Yusufi, thank you so much for being here today.
It's wonderful being here with you.
I know what you're doing is very important. You have a small office staff, so the time spent here is greatly important. And we have a lot to talk about, but before we do that, I think it's helpful to understand your background. You were an immigrant yourself, your work experience, your school experience. Tell us a little bit about Yusufi Vali.
Yeah, I'd love to. And before we get into that, I just want to say, you know, I feel very privileged and honored that the mayor has chosen me for this position, and because it is a really awesome responsibility. You know, 29% of Boston is foreign-born, which pales still in comparison to what it was at the turn of the century, which was over 38%,
wow,
right, of foreign-born folks in our city. And the other thing I just want to say is that, you know, the mayor's really has got the heart for this issue and heart for immigrants.
He's from an immigrant family himself.
Son of immigrants himself, exactly. Right. And I have to tell you that, you know, being in city, I've only been here for 5 weeks now.
Okay.
And
we'll be gentle on you today. Okay.
But the person to my left is Catalina Lopez, who's the director of food access. The person to my right is Rufus Falk. The chief of our office is Chief Marty Martinez. And I gotta tell you, really good people, committed to service, committed to working hard. And I hate to say that, but you know, there's a stereotype sometimes of government as, you know, folks who aren't working, etc. But that's been absolutely the opposite of my experience. So I just want to share with people that there's a lot of good folks working hard, really across the board in the city, trying to do the right thing by our citizens.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
So about me, I'm really excited about this role because I'm an immigrant myself.
Where were you born?
So I was born in the United Arab Emirates, but I'm Indian of origin. So I lived in the United Arab Emirates for 4 years. My parents had immigrated there for economic opportunity. When I was 4, we decided to come back to India. And then when I was 9, my dad decided to take us from the middle of India to the middle of America. We'd just gotten our green card. And so we moved to Kansas City, Missouri.
Okay.
And like most immigrant families, you know, the first 3 to 4 years were a real struggle for both of my parents. My dad was 44, my mom was 40. And the only job my dad could find at that time was temp jobs. So going door to door, distributing yellow page directories, which I used to do with him, or construction jobs. So nothing that was steady, right? And my mom became a caretaker, had to work for the first time in our life to ensure that we had food on the table. And so I really got to see that struggle up front.
At a very young, vulnerable age.
Absolutely. And got to see how they had a challenge navigating the school system. And so in many ways, I'm able to identify with our immigrant population. At the same time, you know, after 3 to 4 years, my family, I believe, were very lucky and got blessed. My father got hired by the Missouri Department of Natural Resources, steady salary, good benefits. We moved out to an area with a good public school system. Because of that, I got into Princeton, was able to go spend a year on a Fulbright in Syria, studied for 2 years in London, and then after that, worked on the Obama campaign, worked as a community organizer for the Greater Boston Interfaith Organization here in Boston, worked on affordable housing issues, education, and healthcare, and then ran the largest mosque in New England, in Roxbury, the Islamic Society of Boston Cultural Center, before coming here. And I share all that because I've been able to really live the American dream. You know, been given so much opportunity in this country, and really what I want to see and what the mayor wants to see is that all of our residents, and particularly our immigrants, have the same shot at the American dream.
So quite a long way from 9-year-old little boy who probably your English wasn't so great at the time?
No, English wasn't too good. I remember the first week I was in America, in Kansas City. You know, there's all these tests I had to take to see what level my English was at. And then there was this wonderful white old lady who was my tutor within the public school system, and used to spend, you know, I think it was 3 to 4 hours a week making sure that my pronunciation was good, making sure that, you know, I'm kind of on track. And that's what we want for our folks, you know, here, our kids in our public school system. I mean, I remember I had gotten a D for like the first 2-3 years, and then in English, and particularly I think vocab I was terrible at. But then because of this work that this lady did with me and my teachers did with me, you know, by high school I was getting A's in English and was kind of on my pathway to becoming a good writer, etc.
You certainly did. Well, you realize most people here in the city of Boston don't even know that this office exists, the Office for Immigrant Advancement. What is MOIA?
Yes. So MOIA, first of all, is a department within the Health and Human Services Cabinet, and our chief is Chief Marty Martinez, fabulous person to work for, I must say. And the goal, the office's work is focused on 2 areas, right? One is immigrant advancement. The mayor changed the name of this office when he came into power from Office of New Bostonians to Immigrant Advancement. And the reason he did this is because he wanted a particular focus on ensuring that immigrants advance economically, civically, and culturally.
Sure.
Exactly. And so a chunk of our work is really focused on that piece. And I'll talk about one really exciting program called Citizenship Day in a second. And my hope is that we spend more and more time on this part of our work. Having said that, we got a new president in 2016, where the rhetoric and policies have really targeted our immigrants. So as a result, a lot of the work of the office has had to focus on ensuring the safety and security and protection of our immigrants here in Boston. And so this mayor launched the Greater Boston Immigrant Legal Defense Fund, $1 million fund, which we're going to put $50,000 in this year as a city, to ensure that our immigrants get good legal representation against the policies that are coming down. A lot of emphasis on Know Your Rights, working with our community partners. And the Trust Act, which I also want to get into a little bit later.
Well, I know it's only been 5 weeks that you've been there, but I'm sure you've been thinking about this for a long time. What is your vision for MOIA as we move down the road?
To focus a lot on civic, economic, and cultural integration of our immigrants. I'll just give you a couple examples of that. One of the ideas we've talked about is potentially putting a 10-week course for immigrant leaders where they get to learn about how the city works, how the budgeting process works, and get to meet with different folks within the city.
I think everybody could gain from that class,
exactly, yes.
that program. Yeah.
And that's about civic integration, right? There is, the mayor had been advocating for a bill to put a commission together for a commission that begins to research how people that come to this country with already a medical background, how do they get certification much quicker so that they can enter our healthcare industry? Because we know there's a scarcity of labor in those industries. The good news is the mayor's advocacy paid off, and now the governor in his last budget put money for a commission towards this. And so how do we, as a city, participate in that, and how do we get more immigrants into the labor force? That's economic integration, right? So those are the kind of pieces that I really want to focus on, while at the same time playing defense, which we have to do.
Which we have to do right now.
Right, exactly.
Yes, okay. Well, you mentioned Citizenship Day, which is a very happy day, and that occurs once a year here in the city of Boston. Can you speak to that a little bit and tell us what that's all about?
Yeah, it's a fabulous day. The mayor is always very excited about it, as is our whole office. it's a day when 400 to 500 people start their application process.
Right.
And this is going to take place Saturday, September 28th. I highly recommend this year that if you are eligible for applying for your citizenship, so meaning you've been on your green card, have been here for at least 5 years, please take advantage of this opportunity now. Why? Number one, it's going to be a very easy, simple process. We have lawyers present, people of very different backgrounds. They're translators for you. So you're not going to need to pay a lawyer or anything like that. And we partner with this fabulous organization called Project Citizenship for it. So that's number one. The second reason is the government has a program, a fee waiver program. So usually it costs $725 to apply for this. But immigrants can qualify for a fee waiver if their income is underneath a certain level.
Right.
And it's
Very
very
helpful.
easy to prove, okay? Now, the Trump administration has announced that it wants to make changes to the fee waiver program. But none of that is in effect at this point. So the process is easy right now. Take advantage of it. And lastly, if you do it now, it takes anywhere between 8 to 10 months to get your citizenship. You're going to be able to vote. And so
that's important.
That's really important
Great
with the presidential elections.
Right.
And so we're encouraging everyone that is eligible, please get in there.
Okay.
Easy process, do this. Now, the important thing is you do need to register, and what you want to do is just Google in Project Citizenship, and there's a number that you can call. And I think I have it here somewhere.
We'll put it up on the screen.
And if you
Glad
guys,
to.
yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Great. Just to let you know,
Yeah.
obviously we do want to get the word out, so we'll probably air this show multiple times. And if you are watching the show after September 28th, go to the website to see the next date. There will be, once a year this occurs. So just want people to not get discouraged if they're thinking, oh, I missed it. It will come up again.
And Project Citizenship actually helps folks throughout the year. This is just the day then we do the most applications. And so definitely you're not going to lose out, and still give Project Citizenship a call.
Great. And I would like to turn to the subject of the media at
Yes.
this point, because given the rhetoric and the policies that are coming down from Washington, what are immigrants feeling? I know you know firsthand.
The reality is that at least among some pockets of our immigrant community, and in Boston the immigrant community is extremely diverse, as you know, but within some pockets, particularly the Latino community, there's fear. And I think what we all need to understand is that, unfortunately, this president is a master of fear, and that's how he's moving on his agenda. And what I want to really point out here, for all of us as Bostonians, frankly, is that this is bad for our country. If you have ever worked in a workplace, which I'm sure many of us have, where the leadership style is one of fear, what happens? People get divided. A lot of time is wasted on infighting. It's all about loyalty, and it's not about the products and services that you're trying to deliver for people. And moving forward. Now, so I think it's just really important for folks to understand that. Here in the city of Boston, what's in control is our city. And what we're trying to do is just make sure we're bringing parties together, having each other's back, and really focused on the mission. And that's why, for instance, with the Trust Act, which I'll get into more, but the mayor brought in the BPD, City Council, and said, look, guys,
let's get together.
Let's figure
this out.
Exactly, figure this out. And that's the leadership style we need. And so, we can't control what's happening nationally, but we can control our city. And we're going to continue, and in my office, we're going to continue working with different people of different backgrounds, having each other's back, and really staying focused on the services, and be hopefully a model for the rest of the nation.
Well, what about us as individuals? What can I do? What can my neighbor do? What can we do as individuals to help?
Well, first of all, I think it's really important to recognize that there are immigrants that are such a part of the city. And so, without a doubt, I'm sure you have an immigrant neighbor, immigrant coworker. Get to know them. Build that relationship. I mean, honestly, that's important whether a person is immigrant or not. It's important for us as a community and a city. Get to know their story. And what you will realize is that just like you and me, they're hardworking folks who are committed to well-being for their family, want opportunity, which is what America is all about, right? So first, get to know them. Secondly, if in any way they're feeling vulnerable, be there for them. If you see something happening to them, don't be a bystander. Be willing to speak up and defend your neighbor, your coworker, right? And then the last thing I'll just say is that that particularly our most vulnerable immigrants are undocumented immigrants, right? And many of them are not going to necessarily share that with you, but if you do build that relationship and they do share, they are so terrified about ICE. But help them or be part of their emergency preparedness plan, because if ICE does show up in front of their door and you are there with them, I know that will be a huge support for them.
Well, you mentioned ICE. The president has threatened ICE activity from time to time, and there are reports of ICE sightings even here in Boston. So can you talk to the city's response to these recent reports?
Yes. So the first 2 weeks I was actually here was the week when the president had threatened the ICE raids, as you may recall. Mm-hmm. And also within those first 2 weeks, I got 3 different reports of ICE activities from residents in the city. And what's really important for people to understand is, first of all, that the president's threat was completely false, frankly. It was just ICE doing. But
they didn't know that.
Exactly. So yeah. ICE was doing business as usual, and then. But what was unfortunate is that the media outlets repeated the president's rhetoric and kind of did the job for the president in terms of creating that fear. Because again, what he's trying to do is create fear and drive out people, that are immigrants from this country, right? Now, because legitimately we were all thinking about the raids, also certain residents, when they saw certain things happening in the city that looked like federal agents, mm-hmm. ended up putting on social media mm-hmm. and reporting that there's ICE activity. In one case, for instance, it was just the security apparatus for the Social Security Administration building that was understood to be ICE. And this got posted and it got shared 500 times on Facebook. Yeah, Facebook. Yeah. So what we very quickly realized in my office was that, look, we need a response plan to fight this fear, because the reality is the president's going to continue to go off, particularly as the election season comes around, because what he does is every time he gets challenged on something substantive, he distracts by moving to the immigration issue. And so what we've done is this response plan, which has 3 steps to it. Number 1 is to verify whether what the president is saying is true or not, and or if an ICE report comes in, whether it's true or not. And we're able to do that because we still have some links within the federal government, and our BPT has to know any law enforcement that's operating within our city.
They have to know, or meaning they have to be told under law? They should be told?
They have to have a relationship, that's there. And so we at least have some links to be able to determine if a report is false or not, right? And so our first step is to verify. The second step is to communicate that to our community partners. Exactly. Yep. And so, to call our community partners, let them know, et cetera, and try to nip the fear in the bud, right? Now, if it happens that the reports are true, if whatever the president threatens, or if there is real ICE activity, at that point, of course, we're going to take the appropriate actions. Sometimes that'll be just making sure that the mayor and the commissioner are meeting with those communities and assuring them that, look, we're not necessarily going to be cooperating with these pieces. Or other times it's just going to be articulating our values as a city, which is we want to make sure all residents feel safe and secure, particularly our immigrants, that they're welcome in the city, and that we want to see them thrive in the city.
Well, you mentioned, getting the word out. Is there a opportunity on your website that you can put up this information? That's helpful.
So what I would say is, what we need people to do is, if they are concerned about something like ICE or see something, to call our office. Okay. Right. And our number is 617-635-2980. And check it out first with us.
Good.
Because,
Good advice.
Because we don't really want to put a lot out on our website, because as soon as you put it out, it ends up starting creating fear. You see what I mean?
Sure.
So to the extent that you can call us, and we can be clear, and you can spread the word, through your own networks. That's the best thing.
Okay.
Of course, if it gets out of control, we will put something up.
Okay. Well, recently the mayor also amended the Boston Trust Act. Can you speak to that, and how is that affecting today's issues?
This president's rhetoric and policies, unfortunately, have created such distrust with the federal government and our federal law enforcement agencies, and very legitimately, but it's unfortunate that that's the reality. The mayor, along with the city council, wanted to make sure that that distrust does not spill over to our local
city.
PD. Right,
yes.
Exactly, and our Boston Police Department. So we created something called the Trust Act, which is fundamentally meant to clarify for our local, for folks that our local law enforcement, and put it as a city ordinance, that our local law enforcement's role is only to enforce state and city laws, and not be used as an arm for federal immigration
term
policies.
there is not be used.
Exactly. Exactly. And so specifically what that means, Lois, is that, when Boston PD, arrests someone for whatever it may be, some minor issue, etc., that if ICE request BPD to detain people and hold them until ICE shows up, we will not do that as Boston Police Department, unless there's a criminal warrant that's approved by a judge, which is very rare.
That's
right?
a different situation.
That's a different situation,
okay.
Exactly. Now, the reason we're amending the Trust Act at this point is because things continue to change in DC, and new policies keep on coming down. And again, we want to ensure that people have complete trust in our PD, that they're just going to be focused on the safety and security of our city. And so as a result, the mayor and Councilor Zakem have proposed certain amendments that we're hopeful that the city council is going to pass very soon.
So what should someone do if they're faced with deportation? What can they do? Right.
What I would say is, first of all, to call a lawyer and/or your consulate. We have a phenomenal program here in my office, where the first Wednesday of every month and the third Wednesday of every month, we offer one-time 15-minute pro bono consultation with a lawyer, 12 to 2 p.m. Please make use of that if you're in a vulnerable situation in any kind of way. And what we always advise people to do is be prepared for a situation before it comes. So if you know you have some issues around documentation, etc., get it checked out at one of our clinics or talk to a lawyer, and just be prepared and have an emergency preparedness plan. And then the last thing I'd just say is that we partner with a number of agencies for Know Your Rights trainings, and come to these trainings at the Irish Immigration Center, the PAIR Project. And you can find all of this on boston.gov/immigrants. Okay. And so please take advantage of those resources.
Staying with the topic of deportation, in the previous administration, there were hundreds of thousands of people who were deported, but never did we hear the public outcry of outrage then that we are hearing today. So what has changed? What is different today? Why are people so emotional today about this?
Yeah.
What's different?
Well, you're 100% right on that. And I think what's different is that, in a strange way, this president, because of his rhetoric and some of his policies, although they're not very effective, but because they are targeting immigrants, it's brought this issue to light. And
he's forcing us to make a stand.
Exactly.
He's forcing us to have an opinion, which is not a bad thing
No.
to be thinking about the subject. He's forcing us to say what's right and what's wrong.
Exactly. And he has, unfortunately, because of his rhetoric, but in some ways, fortunately, really allowed people to see how the system was running. And the reality is, look, our immigration system needs a lot of updating, a lot of updating. And as the mayor has continually said, people need to work together in DC to figure out our immigration system, because otherwise there's always downstream consequences on cities, and agencies are not working well because of that as well. And so, that's what's happened here.
Okay, let's change direction and talk about public charge. Can you define it for me? What is public charge, and what's the new proposal that's out there to
Lois,
redefine
you're
it?
asking me about all the hard questions.
Good, good.
So public charge has been part of our immigration policy really from the late 1880s. So it's been a part of this thing for quite some time. And what it is what it says is that if a person who's in this country, right, legally, is applying for an updated legal immigration status, and a person doesn't need to necessarily be in this country, it can also be abroad, but if a person is applying for legal immigration status, that an immigration officer can deny them that status if they are going to be dependent on the government for economic support, right? And so what historically the public charge clause allowed was essentially huge discretion. And that allowed biases to come in. And so in the 1880s...
And they can interpret it any way they want.
Exactly. And in the 1900s, it was used actually to target Irish Catholic immigrants.
Yep.
And then later on, the Chinese were targeted by it. Now in 1999, there was more specificity around it. So basically, what was made clear was that that an immigration officer could only apply public charge if the person who was in the country had been receiving some kind of cash assistance or was gonna need long-term institutionalized care, right? And on that basis, they could deny. So it got clear, and public charge was not being used much in the last 10 years. What the Trump administration wants to do is expand those criteria for it. So if you get food stamps, Medicaid, or housing, then that could be used as evidence to deny you. And essentially what we're going to start seeing is, because the discretion is also going to become, for immigration officers, broader, is that what we're going to end up seeing is that a lot of folks, particularly from Asian, African countries, are going to start to be denied because biases do get in, and most of our immigration officers come from a particular background. So that's essentially what public charge is. But really important points I want to make. What is going to happen for us here in Boston, if this rule goes through, and the good news is there's lawsuits, and our AG is one of the folks that has filed a lawsuit, so there's going to be a little bit of stop to it for a while. But if it goes through, what we're going to see is family separation here in Boston. The way that'll work is, let's say a person here has the appropriate status, right? They're here on a student visa, et cetera, and now they're applying for a green card, or
they could be denied.
But they could be denied, right? And so now what you're going to start to see is family separation here in the city of Boston. Parents being taken away, the same kind of stuff that you see in the border in the news. You're going to see that. I really hope that weighs on all of our conscience. So that's number one. The second piece is there's going to be real economic impact because the people that are going to be most impacted are going to be the folks that work in our nursing industry, hospitality industry, construction jobs, and they're part of our the labor backbone of Boston and Massachusetts, and that's going to hit
29%.
20, yeah, exactly. Exactly, and the BPDA actually did a study on this and found that they did an impact analysis on this. So what that's going to mean for you and me is that we're going to pay more for our landscaper. We're going to pay more for when we need a plumber or electrician. We're going to pay more for our food. and that's why, as soon as public charge came out, the mayor was very vocal about it. We submitted a public comment to it with our impact analysis that the BPDA did, and he called for an impact analysis here in Boston, which we presented to the federal government. And more recently, given the news last week, we have also he also commissioned our office to ask for a meeting with the budget of Office of Management to explain the problematic effects of all of this.
Well, if I can keep you here for a few more minutes, I have a few more hard questions, complicated questions. Can you update us perhaps on some of the programs that have come under fire, such as DACA?
Yeah. So DACA is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, right. And this is a temporary program that was created for really the children of our country, right? Imagine kids like myself that came here, that actually were brought here, rather.
Yeah.
You know, anywhere ages 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, like myself. And these kids are as American as apple pie, right? And so what President Obama did was, because there was an immigration reform, did an executive order, created this temporary program so that kids could go to college, our kids could work. Unfortunately, the president has now made it such that there can be no new applications for DACA. Okay. However, if you currently are on DACA, you are able to renew your application. So that's DACA. TPS is temporary protected status. Imagine you're a person that comes to this country, and back home a disaster happens, like Haiti, or major political crisis with political violence like in Syria, right? At that point, you can get something called temporary protected status until things become better in that country.
Safer.
Right. Now, in reality, at times what happens is that, you know, sometimes it takes 10 years before things are safe. And by that time, you become so American and you're able to work because of this program, et cetera. You're such a part of community life. Right, exactly. So, which was the case, for instance, with my parents, right? Even if my parents wanted ever to go back to India, there's no way they could, because they've become so American in who they are. And they believe in freedom, equality, and the American dream, right? And but again, the Trump administration is focused on expiring this program. Much of this program for many different countries is meant to expire in January 2020. Now, there are, again, lawsuits going on, which could delay all of this, but he's bringing an end to that. Again, the important point here is we really need our elected officials to work together at the national level to create immigration reform. And if they're not going to do that here in the city, we're going to work together, and here in the state, we're going to work together with our Republican governor and do things the right way and stay focused on our mission.
Well, everyone needs to be armed with this information, with the best information possible. And you've mentioned, I'd just like to summarize many things that you do offer that are free, that are so accessible, like Citizenship Day. Help me out here.
Know Your Rights trainings, professional development for a number of teachers in Boston Public Schools, our immigration clinics that are free.
Information corners?
Information corners that we have in libraries, 24 different libraries, as well as a couple of youth centers.
And how would someone find out which library and what hours? And
just go to our website, boston.gov/immigrants. And it's basically a corner with all your Know Your Rights material, et cetera, so you can easily access it. Okay. And there's a number of organizations on it, including ours, and feel free to give us a call.
I know the city of Boston is on the cutting edge of creating these offices and also, evolving so that the office stays relevant and as helpful as possible. Are there other offices like this in the country? Are there many others?
We were the first
in
the nation, as we tend to be. And New York has one, and now a number of different cities have followed suit with us. And actually, we collaborate significantly with these different cities as we're trying to deal with public charge, as we're trying to deal with DACA, TPS. And in fact, the meeting that we are requesting with the Office of Management Budget, we're hoping to do that with a number of different cities, including San Francisco, et cetera.
Well, what about programs like the food access programs? Should people still feel safe taking advantage of those?
Absolutely. Any city programs, for instance, like Summer Eats, which is this fabulous program for any kids that are under 18, they can get free meals during the summer. And actually, if you come at City Hall, you can get free meals right outside of City Hall in that courtyard area. So yeah, people should feel extremely comfortable with that. Any food program that the city offers, and frankly the state offers, should be fine. And we have a phenomenal food access department. Director Catalina Lopez Ospina is the one that's leading that. And this staff is just working like crazy to ensure that people can still make use of these benefits. And the thing that I want to say is, look, folks, these benefits, these programs are there so that families can get a step up and are able to really thrive in our city. Because sometimes cash can be tight, right? And you need access to this. And so we encourage immigrants, really all of our residents, to please use these programs so that you can thrive. And that's really what we want to see as a city.
We live in a great city.
We do.
Yes, and I'm glad the City of Boston has an office such as yourself. You're now the director, Yusufi Vali. Thank you so much for joining us. Truly, you're of a small office and a busy one, so we appreciate your time, and we're going to do our best to help get the word out.
My pleasure, and thank you for everything that you all are doing to get the word out. And I look forward to being back in the show once we go through our strategic plan. I want to talk about the civic, economic, and cultural integration pieces.
Anytime that you can tear yourself away from the office, we'll have you here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks. And thank you, our viewers, for watching. The Office for Immigrant Advancement concentrates on people, one individual at a time. It could be your neighbor, a relative, a friend, a coworker. And we all need to work together to get the word out. The best accurate information possible. Their website, boston.gov/immigrant, is extremely helpful. And as always, our message here is to be informed and to get involved. So join us next time on Commissioner's Corner.